Good morning. My name is Laura Budd. I'm the Executive Director of the New Canaan Chamber of Commerce, and we're very happy to be here for our annual breakfast with the First Selectman. Unfortunately, we're not able to be all together at a great restaurant enjoying a good breakfast and some networking. Hopefully, this will be the last time that we will have a Zoom chamber networking meeting, but we're really happy to have everybody here. The First Selectman always does this. It's a great annual tradition. We're on a webinar format, so I would encourage everyone to put their view in speaker view. And if the First Selectman is going to speak, and then we will take questions at the end. So as he speaks, if you've got a question you'd like to ask him, go ahead and type it into the Q&A function. I'm going to hand it off to our board president, Meredith Bach from Rand Insurance, and then we'll go straight to Kevin. So take it away, Meredith.
Thanks, Laura. Good morning, everyone. And just a quick note, Laura is doing a great job as our executive director. We miss Tucker, but of course, Laura is taking on the reins perfectly and is doing such a great job under really difficult circumstances. But anyway, on behalf of the Chamber Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome everybody and for joining us today, because this is a very important event that we have every year, and it's a great tradition. I'm excited to introduce our speaker, the First Selectman, Kevin Moynihan. We are so lucky to have a town leader such as Kevin who supports our business community. Cannot thank him enough. He's going to give us some updates on what's happening in our next station to heaven, and he'll take some questions, as Laura mentioned. And I promise Kevin did not receive any questions in advance and will not fall asleep during the press conference. So take it away, Kevin.
Thank you, Meredith, and thank you, Laura. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be here by Zoom. I was up late last night with the library Zoom, or the P&Z commission meeting Zoom, and I do about 5 or 6 or 7 Zooms a day. So it's a way of life that I look forward to hopefully ending soon. That we go back to in-person meetings, and we're actually talking about trying to go back to in-person Board of Selectmen meetings, and hopefully we'll do that in the next few weeks. But anyway. Obviously, top of the order always is COVID. That rules our life these days. And I read this morning that the state Senate yesterday extended the governor's orders until May 20th. It's been a bit controversial to be living by executive order, but quite honestly, it's made life easier. And I give Governor Lamont and his staff a lot of credit for the amazing job they've done throughout the whole pandemic, but especially now with vaccinations. And the town's role, before we started here, we were debating about how long we're going to continue the mask order. The reality is the governor is directing how things operate in Connecticut, and our job locally is to enforce the governor's orders and make sure people understand them. And I think we've done a good job locally with that. We've gone through a lot of phases of this pandemic through the lockdown last year, coming into the reopening in the summer, and having outdoor dining and trying to support the business community as much as possible last summer into the fall. And then it was disappointing not to have football. In my view, I think the only mistake the government made was not allowing football in August, September, October. And but then we came into the winter, and the virus came back, and it was a little bit rocky through December, coming into January. We've been on the downtick until last couple of weeks, last week in particular. And I think there's concern that this could be a temporary bump up. I think CDC just said Connecticut is the 3rd in the country with positivity, and that's concerning. Should be concern us all. We're kind of in a race to the finish line with the vaccinations versus the virus. So I think I am concerned. The governor is concerned. Mayor Martin in Stamford is concerned. We're doing a great job in New Canaan with vaccinations, and people sort of have the idea once you're vaccinated, we're home free, but we're really not, because we have a lot of folks who come into New Canaan to work, both from Stamford and Norwalk and surrounding towns, and their vaccination rate is not nearly as high as New Canaan's is, and the towns that are in the fortunate position of, one, having people understand that they should get vaccinated, but also are arranging to have the vaccinations delivered locally. So we've been doing things to reach out to the local business community to help get their employees vaccinated. If anyone hasn't addressed that, it's important that you do, and I would encourage you to talk to the health department, because all we need is for essential. I give enormous credit to the essential workers who show up for work every day in stores and restaurants, but it's important that they get vaccinated. I think Woodway Country Club just had a bit of an outbreak, and didn't close them, but you're very vulnerable to one individual from out of town who can cause an outbreak locally. So as far as that, we continue to make testing available for the town. That's been very important and convenient for people to be able to go over 3 days a week to get tested. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. This week we won't have Saturday because of the holiday weekend, but that weekly testing gives us an indication of what's happening locally. As I said Monday night, we ticked up to 3.9%, which is actually higher than the state's positivity rate, which is about 3.7%. So that's the COVID situation. We've administered a total of almost 4,000 first doses in New Canaan, and about 1,800 second doses. Of course, we did all of our educators locally, both the public schools, the private schools, the nursery schools, the daycare centers, and all the related personnel, cafeteria workers and bus drivers. And so, again, we're doing very well in New Canaan when it comes to vaccinations and making testing conveniently available. But we have to get through April and see where we stand after school vacations, and see if we have something that goes sideways on us versus continue to make the progress we thought we were making. It's amazing to me how much variability there is across the country. Massachusetts is doing much better than we are, but then you look at Europe and France and England, and those countries are still doing poorly and are locked down, and you wonder who's doing the right thing and what you need to do to get beyond this pandemic. But anyway, I'd be happy to take more questions about COVID and the pandemic, but let's move on to some of the topics we want to talk about. The town council will vote tonight on the budget. I'm very pleased. Back when we started working on the budget last October, it's hard to believe a budget is really a 5 or 6 month process, but I didn't think we were going to be able to keep the mill rate flat. With the town council's action tonight and the Board of Finance meeting in April and May, I think we're going to come with a reduced mill rate downtick from last year. Last year was we kept the mill rate flat. So and now with the real estate market recovering, I hope as we go, as real estate values are, I'd like to think, returning to normal, that we will be able to, with an upcoming revale in 2 more years, be able to get back down to the 16, 17 range with a mill rate rather than up at the 18 level of where we are right now. That's important both for business and for homeowners, and that's certainly my goal, to try to continue to have one of the lowest mill rates in the state, and especially with our neighboring towns. So the budget overall, there's been a lot of chatter about the Board of Education budget, and I think the Board of Finance, I've explained this in public a couple of times. The Board of Finance, I really take pride in our Board of Finance. We have an amazingly accomplished Board of Finance, and they are very diligent. They understand the budget. I've been at this game now for 7 years, 8 years on the town council and as first selectman, and I think the Board of Finance really understands the budget, and not only just a couple of members of the board, but the entire board, and it's all working together. And the whole issue with the Board of Education is that COVID makes things uncertain, because last year the town supported the board in spending about $1.9 million on COVID mitigation measures, including, a big item, for example, is $500,000 for permanent substitutes, which got the superintendent through the ability to keep schools open. By the way, I want to give a shout out to Dr. Brian Lutzy and his entire team. It was an amazing job our superintendent and team did to keep the schools open, unlike most of our neighboring towns and certainly the state. And so they've done a great job. But when it comes to COVID, a lot of this is uncertain, and we also have a bunch of federal dollars about to rain down on us. And we don't want to tax our residents, tax our businesses for something that is temporary. So the whole debate was, let's figure out exactly what the COVID expenses are likely to be for the upcoming school year. And both in terms of protective measures at school, but also there's a big variability going on right now with health expenditures. People deferred procedures last year, and now people anticipate that the upcoming year is going to be a bad year for health insurers. We self-insure on both the town and the Board of Ed side. So we look at the world as an insurance company and what's our expectation. But we also don't want to over-reserve for things that may not happen. So it's a good debate. It's a debate that is being done very professionally with the Board of Education and the superintendent. And I think we're going to come out in a good place with that and not be increasing taxes for something that doesn't need to be increased with the COVID expenses. So that's the budget. Obviously, going back to the things we were doing to help the business community locally, one of the things that the Senate did yesterday also was confirm the keeping restaurants having outdoor dining through next March. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of the outdoor dining. I've been very interested to see what Greenwich is doing with Greenwich Avenue to make outdoor dining more of an experience. And I think we need to really investigate that. In my view, we're very fortunate. When I moved to New Canaan 40 years ago, I think we had 2 or 3 restaurants, and now I think we're a restaurant destination, and it really makes the town not only vital, but also a place where people come and experience what New Canaan has to offer by way of shops and art galleries and a lot of other things. And so I think it's really important that we support the restaurants in their outdoor dining plans and make it permanent to the extent people want to, so that we can have people coming to New Canaan from all the surrounding towns and enjoy our fabulous restaurants. And let's see. Obviously, when I ran for this office, I really had 3 focuses. One was commuter parking. Now, obviously, the commuter parking world has turned upside down, and I'm glad I'm not opening a $12 million parking deck at the lumberyard, which would have been in the cards. But when we saw the $12 million price tag, we decided that wasn't the answer. We got very lucky with boxcar, and so our ability to provide parking for commuters has really changed with the world in parking. I'd like to. I'll go back to parking in a second as far as downtown. But the other major thing was natural gas. And, I'm, as you all feel, we're struggling through this horrible period of terrible roads downtown while we get the remaining people who want to sign up for gas installed. We're in the 3rd year. Unfortunately, Eversource lost ground last year when they basically closed down their marketing operations. So we have a backlog of people residentially as well as downtown and Elm Street and the downtown businesses to convert to gas. And we Tucker in particular is working with Eversource to try to get them to give us a further expansion downtown while they're here. Their commitment was like $30 million for 3 years. And they have pipe in the ground. It's been disappointing that we haven't made more progress with Elm Street and Main Street and Forest Street with restaurants to convert them to gas and get rid of all these propane tanks and more expensive propane to heat and run your kitchens with. And so we're trying to make progress in that, but we're also trying to get Eversource to focus on the west side of town in terms of Upper Elm Street from Park, Pine Street from Park, Grove Street, and also over on the east side, they're going to be completing Main Street up to Locust. and down Locust to the new development at the corner of Forest and Locust. But there's office buildings over there. So we're trying to get as much mileage out of Eversource as we can this summer. And hopefully, you know, Eversource has been very pleased with the receptivity of New Canaan residents to convert to gas, but we hope to convince them to do more. They obviously have a lot of demands on their resources throughout the state to expand gas and and they have to constantly be working on replacing old pipe in Stanford and other places. But anyways, I just want to emphasize how much time focus we have on Eversource to get as much gas utilization as we can while they're here. The other major focus I had was cell towers, and cell towers may be the slowest thing in the world to try to move forward, but we were very pleased, even though it got slowed down a bit by COVID last year. The Soundview Lane Tower, which I think when it's built, it's in the process of being built, will be extremely innocuous to everyone, as a faux pine tree among a stand of trees. But it's very important that we have that service in that northeast corner of town. And then last year we got lucky with trying to focus on the northwest part of town. We've focused for years on the poor public safety radio reception we've had, and we need a permanent tower in the northwest. We had proposed a public safety tower, which this town of Stanford, city of Stanford, opposed, and so now we're bringing forward a proposal, and it's been, to my surprise, AT&T has agreed up front. We didn't expect AT&T to come forward for another year, but we have a plan to build a tower up on Upper Ponus Ridge near the reservoir. Again, very much like Soundview Lane, a faux pine tree, likely that will be very innocuous, but will be a very important addition to our both public safety radio, but also cell service in the northwest part of town. We then have to return to down on the west side of town, the center of town. We still don't have 21st century cell service, and I continue to focus on that continually, and working on other locations and with the carriers and our partner Homeland Tower. So be happy to take questions on that, but that's something we spent a lot of time on. And getting back to parking downtown, last year when we experimented, we wanted to experiment with the idea of free parking altogether. Obviously, we've lost a ton of revenues from parking with both commuter parking and initially when we made parking free for last year with COVID. But we wanted to experiment with free parking because parking is not a revenue, it's not an economic issue for the town. It's a matter of how we provide the most convenient access for both workers and restaurant goers and shoppers to be able to find parking to do whatever they want in town. And I think the expansion of the business permits downtown in the Park Street, Morse Court lots has been very helpful to realtors and others to be able to conveniently have a committed place to parking lot to park in. But then with this experiment, which we started with the Parking Commission for free parking for workers downtown, both in the Center School lot and the Locust lot, appears to be a great success. So that for people who work in restaurants and retail shops, et cetera, that are willing to walk 2 blocks to have free parking, that looks like a very, very successful experiment, and one that we probably hopefully will continue. I'd be happy to take questions on that and discuss that. But I've been very surprised at how well that's working, and I think it's turning out to be a good answer. But the issue again is we have plenty of parking. We just have to make sure how we maximize its use so that people have the convenience of a committed permit if they work downtown, and inexpensive parking if they're coming down just to shop or go to restaurants. So what haven't I covered? Altice and the whole, last summer's experience with the tropical storm, the put a lot of the town out of commission for several days, as much as a week. Pointed up the weakness we have, not only in cell towers, because a couple of our cell towers that don't have emergency generators went out. And we're focusing on that as well. We never, so that we don't have that happen again. But also our internet service in town, and lo and behold, and we're not the only town looking at this, because with everyone working from home, being on Zoom calls or distance learning, in some ways, I'm kind of surprised how well the system held up, because I think the existing service level is sort of satisfactory, but it could be better. And around the country, there's a race to have gigabit internet service, which you only get with fiber, as opposed to the coaxial cable that we've had for Cablevision, Optimum, up till now. And then Frontier is in town with half the town with UVerse. And come to find out, to our surprise, Altice is actually wired in Canaan for fiber, and you have the option of switching to fiber if you want to. They may be the worst marketing organization in the world, certainly in the United States, and we have many examples of that we can show you. They need to get a lot better with their service, and I think we could, those who want upgraded levels of internet service with fiber, it's available, and we want to educate the public about that. You actually have to, well, anyway, that's a whole topic, Tucker, and we could talk about. Let's see, have I covered it? I suppose, why don't I jump to taking questions, because I think I covered the major topics that I wanted to touch upon. So
we were going to talk about the downtown, the stuff we talked about with Tiger and Maria the other day.
Okay, so as you recall, due to state rules about the distance between intersections and parking, we lost several spots downtown. And before COVID started, Tiger was going to come forth with a proposal to create permanent bump outs between South Avenue and on Elm Street, between South Avenue and heading toward Park. Therefore, Tiger and Tucker plan to bring this to the not to the police commission in mid-April at their April meeting. But Laura and Tucker would like to get more input from the Elm Street community. And therefore, Laura, you're going to schedule a call or a Zoom or a...
Yeah, we're going to schedule a Zoom next Tuesday. I'm sending out the invite today.
So it's very important that people, and the surprising result of this is there's actually a net recovery of spaces, but then we're talking about perhaps adding some 15-minute slots. So I don't want to, the proposal is a good one, I think, but I think it's important that it be socialized with everyone before it gets to the police commission, so we can make sure everybody understands it. Tucker and Laura, if you want to address that a little more, but I think it's important that you realize that, but it's also, accommodating to some extent the outdoor dining in part of Elm Street, and perhaps will lead us to look further in exploring how we can further have permanent bump outs that facilitate outdoor dining.
Yeah, just to give everyone a little bit more frame of reference, what Kevin's referring to are the crosswalk intersections. The state law requires that there has to be 25 feet clearance or visibility in the crosswalks. So that's when we lost all those parking places, over a year ago or so, to accommodate that. And then that's when this whole idea came up of, is there a way to create, to make that work for us, honestly? And that's when Tiger came up with this plan. So yes, you'll all be getting an invitation to join us to talk a little bit more about how we see that, and if we were to move forward, how we would present it and how it would look.
What we saw was that by creating those buffer zones, people were using them as pull-up and loading, and making their own loading zones. And in our estimation, it made downtown more dangerous. It was very counterintuitive. So Public Works has come up with an interesting solution. So we're excited to share that with people.
The other thing, Kevin, maybe you want to talk about the new location for the farmers market and how the employee program really prompted the new location for that.
Yeah, let me touch upon that with the library and the connection with there. So on the library, you know, we're thrilled that the library project is moving along through P&Z, and hopefully we'll have a shovel in the ground in June. Obviously, the debate about the 1913 building is one that has to get resolved, and I'm very impressed with the many letters that we get on both sides of that issue. But you know what the town did with the library when they discovered the library is in a great location in many ways to have a vital library downtown, but it's also situated on a state road that creates rather difficult traffic flows for us. And so their original plan to have underground parking simply was problematic when it came to the traffic flow, especially having cars come out of an underground garage onto Main Street, so close to Maple Street. And as they reconfigured their plan, as was explained last night, and they had to shrink the building a bit, the underground parking was problematic just from a logistics point of view. The concern would be people would go into the garage and have to circle around and find there's no parking and come back out. So, and also then the cost. I mean, you know, underground parking is very expensive. We asked them to examine every possible way of having underground parking, and they came up with 9 different analyses, and all of them had problems with traffic, but they also all cost over $100,000 a space. And that's kind of crazy. I mean, so then we focused on the fact that the library sits between 2 public parking lots, one of which at Morse Court is very actively used, and the center school lot has been a problem child for years because it's kind of 100 steps too far from people who want to do something on Elm and Main. And so that's where the free parking began to show us that it's a solution to the workers downtown. And so we made a commitment with this experiment, which I think we need to continue, that we can get people to use center school lot if you're working downtown all day. But the library needs about 76 spots. They currently have 63, and it was surprising how little the library people actually used the center school lot, except at certain times of day, at the end of the day, because the revenues from people from the library were very small. So the proposal was to help the library solve their parking problem, and you know, keep their problem is really our problem, because they're Canaan residents. They're looking to do something downtown, just like if you're coming to a restaurant or you're coming to shop, that the town has an obligation to help you have parking. And the library is an essential function downtown. You know, we offer free parking at Town Hall for visitors, and so we have an obligation with the library to facilitate their parking. And we're not, you know, if we had plans to develop that lot, it'd be a different story. But no one, you know, really wants to build something there, and we need parking downtown. So our commitment was to provide free parking to downtown workers in the back half of the lot and the front half of the lot for the library, which unfortunately has displaced the farmers market. It was a convenient location, but there's been a lot of sentiment for years that, you know, the farmers market could do well in a couple of locations on a Saturday, and so the decision has been made to have them in the lumberyard lot for this summer, and hopefully that will be an attractive. The lumberyard lot has always sat empty on a Saturday, and it's larger, and it's personally, I think, having lived, that's my neighborhood, I live on Upper Elm Street, I think it'll be a very successful location. If that location doesn't turn out to be as satisfactory, we can look at the Playhouse lot, we can look at bringing it closer to downtown, but we're committed to support the farmers market, but also it's not, we just have to accommodate the needs where they are, and we had to accommodate the needs for parking adjacent to the library and also the parking for workers downtown. So why don't I begin to take questions?
Okay, so if anyone has questions, at the bottom of your screen is a Q&A function, and pop them in there, and we will cultivate them and work through them.
Laura, do you want to unvideo you? We can't see.
Yes, Meredith, there we go.
I want to see your face.
There we go. Okay. Who's got a question? I don't see anything in the chat or the Q&A. We got a lot of topics. We covered COVID, we covered parking, we covered cell towers, we covered library.
I'll start with a question.
There we go.
Kevin, what's going on this summer? Do you think we'll have a parade and a 4th of July?
Well, I'm hopeful that we can have a parade. I think we won't know until early May. Fortunately, a parade doesn't require a lot of planning for us, other than the ceremony at the cemetery, which we'll definitely have, I think, this year. You know, given it's all going to depend on what develops in April. If this uptick continues and then declines coming into May, I think chances of having a parade are very good. Probably maybe not with all the kids marching in the parade, but maybe we need to reroute it so it's a longer route so people can space out more. But I think the prospects for a parade, provided we don't go south on our COVID positivity, are very good. Family 4th, I'd like to think we're going to be in a different world. I hope that we're going to have even the kids vaccinated by into May, and so that by the family 4th, most New Canaanites have been vaccinated, and we could feel comfortable having a large event. Of course, it's going to depend on where the state is. The governor, unfortunately, has had to do things that are pretty much statewide. We had big debates in the beginning about whether things could be done on a regional basis, but you know, regions really don't work because people are so mobile. So we have to live by the rules that the governor comes up with. And I hope if COVID is declining into May, by July 4th, we're going to have, not totally normal, but we're going to have some kind of family 4th with fireworks that will have as many people as we're allowed to have safely.
I was so impressed with the library's presentation last night about the grade of the green. That's going to be a hot spot for the parade. People are going to want to be on that hill. Yeah.
Okay, Kevin, I've got 2 questions here for you. If people work in town, can they get a vaccine at Lapham? Can they sign up for that?
Yes, that's what I said. Call the health department. We're going to facilitate the local business community needs. Fortunately, to my surprise, you know, initially we thought we were getting shorted by the state on the number of doses we were getting. We literally got 100 when we asked for 1,000 in the beginning. Then we've been so successful, they're giving us to some extent more than we can actually deliver weekly. But we have we're getting a lot of doses, and even though it's quite a challenge, and my comments about continuing it was really related to the fact that trying to administer 750 doses in a day is a real challenge for the staff and the doctors who are doing it. You know, we were open till 8:30 that night, last Wednesday night. And as long as we can, so the good news is we should have the supply and we should have the ability to accommodate people. And hopefully we're going to be addressing the high school kids in by the end of April. I saw that Stanford has just scheduled their seniors in high school, but there should be supply. The good news is there's supply, and anybody who works in New Canaan, we should be able to accommodate at Lapham. At the same time, I would emphasize there's great availability at Stanford Hospital, and there's I forget the name, the Community Health operates a mass vaccination site at the Lord and Taylor parking lot, and there's Community Health operates in Norwalk, and so there's a lot of availability out there, and especially as the pharmacies have come online. You know, down in Florida, the pharmacies were the only place that you could get vaccinations. It was a bit of a mess in Florida. Talking to a lot of people, the Canaanites that are down there for the winter, but the availability is coming online. So you shouldn't feel that you can only, you may do better to just call Stanford Hospital and get an appointment sometimes for tomorrow. I mean, they have a lot of capacity, but they're also a bit, you have to simply go online with Stanford Hospital or call them. And I think you'll be surprised about the availability. Same thing with the community health. But we will, if you contact the health department, we should be able to accommodate people at Lapham. Maybe not next week, but 2 weeks out.
Kevin, there's a question, since we're on vaccines, I'm going to stay on this theme. What is the date that you plan on phasing out the vaccinations at Lapham? And, is that in the works? And it's been successful, so people are hoping that that will continue.
We're going to continue it. We're going to continue it indefinitely as long as the demand is there. We're getting a lot of volunteers to help. The doctors in town are helping. They could have shifted and sent the vaccines to the doctors so people can do it in doctors' offices, but they've decided to limit it to public clinics and public health departments. So we will continue it. I just saw this morning that Pfizer has been proved safe or effective in kids as young as 12. So I expect we're going to see, and presumably it's safe. I mean, no one's had reactions to Pfizer medically. So that I would expect the next development is to drop the age down to 12 for Pfizer and perhaps Moderna. Again, the objective will be to get everybody vaccinated, but we should be able to at least get high school kids and perhaps middle school kids vaccinated as we come into the end of April and into May. So.
Now we have a question about the meeting last night. Someone was was unable to watch the meeting last night and was hoping to get sort of a summary. No decisions were made for sure, but I don't know if you want to give a top line of what happened.
My top line was, I think the P&Z commissioners are very receptive to the library proposal. It's everyone supports the idea that we need a new and vibrant library. I don't, based upon the questions that were asked by commissioners, I don't see any serious issues they have. The 1913 building is simply someone has to make a decision. And I don't know whether planning and zoning makes that as part of their responsibility as to what downtown should look like, or whether the town council simply has to decide. The Board of Selectmen decided to move it on. The Board of Selectmen could not have decided that issue alone. But I think there's, the 3 selectmen voted unanimously to include that paragraph, which said, someone's got to decide this as part of concluding the agreement with the library, the MOU. And so I'm sure by mid-May at the latest, we will have a decision on that. People are sympathetic to the notion of preserving a building that's not only attractive, but historic in a New Canaan sense and provides a lot of character. But at the same time, so there's strong feelings that you want to start fresh with a library and have a beautiful new lawn as well. So I had hoped that, as I've told people, I worked for 2 years to try to buy the Gulf Station because the Gulf Station to me is one, not for this world forever. Hopefully someday both the mobile station and the Gulf Station will be gone and they'll make beautiful greens. But people decided to buy the Gulf Station for a ridiculous price. So
I thought another interesting thing was, first of all, there was they just didn't have time for public comment. The library.
They didn't plan to take public comment last night. John Goodwin, made it clear that the next meeting, actually they plan to have a special meeting in order to move it along. So it won't wait till the end of the month of April. It'll be a special meeting and they'll give ample time to the 1913 preservation proponents. And I think people have called it a small vocal group. The reality is preservation is a value that people in New Canaan generally treasure. I mean, I didn't feel so strongly about a brick barn in Mead Park. I think that didn't have a lot of value, but the building itself, the 1913 building, is an attractive building and one that deserves a lot of consideration as to how we can preserve that, consistent with making a beautiful new library campus.
Okay.
And along those lines, do you want to give an update on our work with the theater?
Yes, I wanted to mention that it's important to recognize Bowtie did not close because they were not doing well. They simply made a strategic decision to focus. Actually, the owner is in Greenwich and he's focusing more on real estate as a business objective. But the Bowtie location was successful. And so it's not as though they closed for unhappiness with their economics, but it also gave us an opportunity. You know, we had looked at doing something different with the movie theater, only to discover that Bowtie had 5-year options going, extending it, I don't know, another 10 years or so. So it's a mixed blessing. We obviously have some issues with that building that we have to remedy. And so, but we have conversations with a couple of different parties, which are very, very fruitful. And we plan to come to a conclusion in April or May with an operator, but then we'll probably have 6 months to have to do improvements on the building before we can reopen. I mean, that's not definite yet, that we perhaps couldn't reopen and then close for a period of time to do the improvements. But that building, fortunately, I was kind of surprised, some of the surprises we have in Town Hall, that we actually have a $850,000 movie theater fund, which all the rents we've received, both from the movie theater and the tenants there, we put into a fund and haven't spent. So we have that money available to make improvements, and there are improvements necessary, both aesthetically as well as a few ADA things that need to be done. But so Tucker and I are actually working on that, and hopefully in April we'll have a
right. And the point being that we fully recognize and support the fact that the theater being in town really drives business into town in all areas. Makes people come to town. Obviously, a lot of people like to go out and eat and go to the movies, but there's so much more that can happen with having a vibrant theater in town. So, and yes, we do own the building, Meredith.
Okay, another question. This is from Patricia Spagani, who has been amazing helping the farmers market get through last year and moving forward. And she was actively involved in site selection. She said, "Good morning, Kevin. A comment and a question. Thank you for the town's overwhelming support of the farmers market. The vendors are looking forward to a new season in New Canaan, although we do expect to miss the green space and shade afforded by the mature trees at Center School lot. My question, you mentioned there were no plans to develop the Center School lot. Do you foresee that this could be the case in the future, such that the commitment to the library parking precludes future generations from using that space for anything other than parking?" And of course, yeah.
You know, again, parking is essential to downtown for all the activities. So people who work downtown, there's a lot of workers downtown on the second floor, let alone the first floor, and the restaurants, and they come at different times of day. So we really have to make parking available to people, everybody, you know. So just to say, just for parking is an essential aspect of what the town is required to do to make downtown work. And if we're going to develop it, we would only do it with underground parking. And underground parking is always expensive. You know, for years and years, we've talked about, you know, you go to other towns in other parts of the country, and Penny Young always points out Palo Alto, California, and, you know, surprisingly, Vail, Colorado, you have a big underground garage. It costs a freaking lot of money to build that garage, but it's a great convenience going forward. So maybe we should do underground parking at Park Street and as a way of having more parking right downtown. But I see BJ Flagg has asked about the Walgreens. We happen to have, and we have a particular problem too with the juxtaposition of commuters and business parkers. So we have the lumberyard lot, and it's very convenient. And most people want to be commuting from the lumberyard, and for many people, Talmadge Hills is a second choice. And but parking to me is an obligation of the town to support our downtown businesses and our downtown workers, and the availability of things like St. Aloysius Church to have their 900 spaces. They have 190 spaces, which used to sit vacant. You know, now Boxcar is giving us the ability to juggle things with commuters, and we have the ability. We've talked to the owner of the Walgreens building that, you know, there's 50 spaces that can be built under the Walgreens building. It just has to be finished out for about $500,000 with lights and a doorway and stuff. So we're going to work on those solutions and continue to try to make parking work for everyone for all times of day. And if we have to turn to building an underground garage somewhere, maybe that should be done. But in the meantime, you know, depending on who's paying that, you know, you couldn't expect the library to do an uneconomic thing with trying to build underground parking. You know, a commercial business can decide to spend that kind of money, but underground parking is very expensive.
There is a question about at the transfer station, the stock exchange or the swap out. Do you know when that's going to get up and running? And it's a good opportunity to repurpose stuff.
Yeah, so Tiger has gotten funds to study that campus. You know, we in some ways have a lot of land there, in other ways we're utilizing it for a lot of purposes. I support doing a swap shop. You just have to have the real estate in the right location so that it works conveniently. So hopefully we'll figure out a plan later this summer, or I'm not sure. We could experiment with it on a temporary basis, but to find a permanent solution, we really have to have a location that works well and is convenient for people to come in and out. So.
Okay. And then back to the center school lot. The question is, will the future center school lot be open to public parking, or is it just for library and downtown workers? And if open to the public, will it be free? I think, you know, someone could technically park there, start walking toward the library and keep walking into town, or use the library, go do an errand and come back. So it's half of the lot will be for downtown workers, and they're on a license plate reader, you know, with permits. But in terms of the public using it, I don't think there's any reason that they couldn't. They typically have not, for sure.
Well, okay, so it's going to remain a public lot, and we will police it as such. The first two rows, most of the first two rows, will say for library parking only, and the back spaces, I think they'll all still continue to be numbered with the ability to pay on a daily basis. If you actually looked at the revenues we had from daily parking there, it was extremely small, which indicated very few people found that an attractive location to go and pay for the metered parking for the day. Depending on the time of day, obviously, the library needs there should be no problem at all from 9 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock, you know, because the needs for the library will be satisfied by the 76 spaces during the day. Of course, you know, keep in mind that library employees don't park there, and also, you know, people have the option of parking on the street, the street parking around there, if you're just running in and out of the library. 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock is the time when demand is put on the lot because of the school kids that come for after school, but that's the time when people begin to leave downtown. So I guess the answer is, you know, I believe it will work well given the demands as to when people need to come to park. But again, I think the whole point of, historically, we tended to make rules that were, in my view, you set rules and then you didn't really kind of watch how well it worked. You know, you have to manage parking. You know, see what you can change, see what you can experiment with. And that's when we hired a consultant last summer to talk to us about how can we get to free parking. And they said, now's the time to experiment. You know, try things, and if they don't work, try something else. So again, my view is, we've had parking studies over the last 20 years. They count spaces, they tell us, but we got a lot of parking spaces. We just have to figure out how to make them the most useful to people. And it's not a revenue thing for the town. It's how do we make it work for people?
And we have found that if, I think, Kevin, it's in the agreement that if after a year of the library being open or a certain time frame, we can reevaluate that lot, and there is the potential of capturing more spaces there in the green space that exists now. We're not doing that right away, but I think it's 25 additional spots that we thought.
Actually, that's important that you mentioned that, Tucker, because the reality is, if that's one of the most inefficient lots too, the way it was designed, we could easily add 20 spots for $100,000. We actually we analyzed it. Maria Copland, our town engineer, analyzed. We can have small, medium, and large if we need to do expansions. And the library is committed to paying for, I think the number is $2 million. Although Lisa couldn't remember that last night, and I'm not sure I can remember whether it was $1.5 million or $2 million. But if we want to expand that lot, obviously there's opportunities. There are big berms, there are trees. It can be reconfigured for more spaces, I think up to 80 additional spaces. My guess is we're not going to have to do that. We're going to find that the way parking flows, it works, but we won't know that until the new library is up and running and they have a year under their belt, and see if we need to expand it. We're committed to, and the library is going to pay for the bulk of the cost.
Switching to the state level, someone asked about the state legislation. What are your thoughts about the proposed zoning, statewide real estate tax, affordable housing, timing and impacts on it? And see, that's kind of a loaded question, but just maybe your general thoughts on what's brewing up at the state legislature.
Well, it's disappointing that the thing has taken on racial tones, because it was annoying to have our young man who is now the mayor of New Haven, who grew up in New Canaan, to call New Canaan and Darien and racist. The reality is, and I read the op-ed article yesterday by Yvonne, who was the former first selectwoman of Darien, that was the housing commissioner. She said that Darien was founded in the early 1800s for wealthy people. I mean, the reality, our towns were not founded for wealthy people. They developed as small towns, and people, if you live a high pressure life in the city, you want to come home to land, and people were not doing it for racial reasons. But the other very important thing is WestCog, our regional council of government, did a study, and Southwest Connecticut is really more of a function of the Manhattan metropolitan area than it is the rest of Connecticut. Now, there's no question that when you look at all of New England, rural areas are more white than cities, but you look at the demographics for Southwest Connecticut, including our towns and Stamford. There's high level of integration and minorities today. So but how zoning relates to that? The argument is made that zoning causes segregation. Well, so when you look at these proposals, for example, allowing multifamily housing as of right up to 4 units in certain areas. Now, it's very important you look at what's being proposed, because Sarah Bronin, who's a very smart lady, a law professor at Yale and a land use lawyer, is emphasizing that towns still have local choice under these proposals. You can decide where you want in your town, where you want the multifamily housing to go. Fortunately, New Canaan already has a lot of multifamily housing downtown. We have apartment zones. Other towns don't have those apartment zones and stuff. Other towns are virtually all single family housing. There's neighborhoods of New Haven, I forget the name of some of the towns. So this is not directed necessarily at the Fairfield County towns, but how it plays in different towns plays differently. We're all committed to having more affordable housing in our neighborhood. It's just that in New Canaan's case, the cost of land makes it very, very difficult to create affordable housing here. Plus, the absence of public transportation makes it undesirable to create housing where you can't get to your job. So New Canaan has done a great job with our affordable housing, thanks to our Laszlo Papp, who had the foresight to adopt the Affordable Housing Fund. We're playing this game with 30G where we get moratoriums, but there's no way we're ever going to have 10% affordable in New Canaan. With 7,000 residential units, we're not going to have 700 legally affordable units. So we're on a treadmill to try to keep up with that mandate. But bottom line is, the zoning thing is somewhat complicated. There's no question one size does not fit all, and hopefully whatever they adopt will allow for local control, but a common commitment to the goals of affordable housing and allowing multifamily housing in areas that is sensible for respective towns. Something's going to be adopted. I think but I just think hopefully people will work toward a common purpose. And as I said in that housing discussion we had last week, that the availability of all these federal dollars that are coming I think Connecticut is going to get $10 billion under the Rescue Act. Some of it ought to be dedicated to affordable housing and give towns and cities some seed money to be able to commit to projects. Most public housing, most affordable housing that is owned by the public operates on a shoestring. And therefore, since it operates on a shoestring, there's never enough money to maintain it well, as you know. So, but most affordable housing is built with borrowed dollars, and you need some equity to be able to start a project, and then it gets paid off with a mortgage over 40 years. But it has to be sensible. You know, our public housing ran down because there's never enough money to maintain it properly. But you know, Canaan Parish is a fabulous project for us. That's going to really be an outstanding example of what you can do with affordable housing and not, you know, and meet our legal obligations, but also do something that's good for the community to make. We also need to focus more on workforce housing. Obviously, you know, to the extent we can have opportunities for policemen and firemen and teachers to be able to live in New Canaan, at least for their early part of their career, you know, in multifamily housing is something we really need to work on.
Thank you, Kevin. Any other questions? We're butting up on 9 o'clock, and I know everybody's got to get moving on with their day. I don't see anything else coming through. So I think we want to thank our first two participants. Oh, Sandy Graff. Sandy, you've got a question, but you got to type it in the chat. You've got a raised hand, but I don't see what your question is.
What building, Meredith, are we talking about leasing or selling?
That was related to the theater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Owned by the town. I'm one of the tenants here.
My underlying thought was, let's not move the Chamber of Commerce office if we don't have to.
We're not going to move the Chamber of Commerce office. And Meredith, we're going to have a conversation about a hotel in town too, right?
That's a secret. We're going to talk about it at lunch on Friday.
Yes, Sandy does. Sandy's hand is put up the whole time. She has no question.
All right, good. All right, well, thank you for everyone for joining us this morning. Thank you, Kevin, for your information, and we appreciate your time. And if anyone has any follow-up questions, circulate them to me and I can get them answered for you. And so thank you, everybody. Have a great day. And we appreciate you being here. And thank you to the New Canaan Library for hosting us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Meredith.
All right, take care, everybody. Have a great day.